Hey everyone, I'm here with Maurice Anton and I'm Anton Ferraro, and we're going to go over some of the recent esports news that's been banging around on the web. So Mo, what has interested you in the last month or so?
I mean, there's a lot of stories happening, and it's really a great time for the industry because every day there's a new big story coming out. So it's really difficult to pick anything. But I think the news that surprised me the most was the fact that LA got a second Overwatch spot, and at the same time we got our first European spot. So the LA spot I think went to the Crunky family, probably butchering that name, and then the first London spot went to Cloud9.
It's weird that Cloud9 has to go all the way across the ocean. They're also based out of LA, so it's just like, why couldn't the Crunky family go to London and Cloud9 stay in LA? I mean, I don't know, that just feels strange to me.
Well, I think the Kroenke family, obviously they have already a setup in LA with some of the other properties that they own. But Cloud9 really is a really big surprise. I think the consensus, as I tweeted out earlier in the week, my consensus were two things. Like, one is like, does Immortals, and I'm assuming, do they know about the LA spot, and like how does it affect their value? Is it a good thing for LA to have, or for any city to have two spots this early without the league actually starting? And the second thing was, why the hell not Fnatic? Like, why? Like, Cloud9 obviously is an amazing organization, but
does Fnatic even have the money right now to buy a spot?
So apparently, and this is pretty interesting, if you go to their co-founder's Twitter page, that he actually tweeted something out like, oh, that's a horrible, great way to wake up with a middle finger from Blizzard in the morning. So, and then if you look a little bit further, he basically explains how he knew that he wrote them a couple emails like on their bid. So apparently they had a bid. So they probably had some money, and then they didn't get any response for his last 4 emails. They assumed, London wouldn't be anything anymore. And then all of a sudden, you get woken up with this kind of news. So besides the obvious lack of communication from Blizzard, which is not good if you want to be the next NFL, as they're saying.
I mean, I feel like Blizzard also probably has a list of people they want to work with and they don't want to work with. So, I mean, from what I've seen is they're trying to go to places that I guess are non-endemic to the league, and it's like, there's the more money. I mean, it's also kind of a huge win for Cloud9 because, they're not going to have to fight over LA with a bunch of other established orgs. And then London by itself, I mean, it's a massive city, it's not a bad place to be in if you're going to be outside of North America.
Yes, it's definitely a really good news for them. It's the first European city, and you have, with London, you have a city that has the human capital to build a successful franchise, while at the same time have an audience that is dedicated to esports and has proven to be able to have events there that can drive traffic. So that's definitely great move by Cloud9. They also announced that they got the CEO of Laser Kittens, which was a earlier Overwatch team, Elysius, I think. He got hired as their Overwatch manager, or the person that's building up the franchise, and then that's really good because a lot of these Overwatch teams, especially from non-endemic team owners, like the Kroenke family, let's say, who they will want to get people like him, and there just aren't a lot of people out there who are able to build this kind of franchise and able to manage it. So that was. They got lucky with 2, or it's not lucky, but they hit it right twice in a row.
See, the thing that I was kind of caught off guard by is, some more news I guess surfaced on this topic later on in the week that I wasn't aware of, but I really thought that Envious was going to be the New York team just because of Shaw and his investment into the team previously, and the fact that now he's with Rect, he's kind of affiliated with Sterling Capital. And when Envious decided to go to Dallas, what is it, they raised $35 million. I mean, it's kind of a no-brainer that some of that is for the LCS, some of that is for Overwatch. That kind of caught me off guard. I was really hoping that NBS would be the New York team, but I guess we're going to still have to wait to see if it's going to be something that was endemic to the space or if it's going to be something totally new.
Yeah, I mean, quite interesting. In an ESPN article, Shaw actually had a statement that said that he never officially invested in
He got
MVS.
so much publicity for that.
Yep, and that's really, really interesting because one of the things that was kind of a deal, something that went under the news and like no one knew about this. And here you have someone who has been making all this news and making all this publicity and I don't know him personally, so I don't want to put words in his mouth. I'm assuming it might have been a miscommunication in the beginning, but here's a clear statement on ESPN Esports that he has made no investment.
Yeah.
Which is very surprising, but as someone with a good connection to Dallas, my fiance is from there, and I've visited a couple times, and I've worked and supported with some of the local esports. It's kind of a hot take, but I think it has the potential to become the esports hub of the South.
Absolutely. I mean, the whole city by itself, it's like it has some of the richest esports history out there. It's like with all the CPLs back in the day. What was it? The Hilton Anatole is like the mecca for esports. It's like that hotel bar has seen some things. I mean, the only other bar that I think has seen more is probably the one outside of the Anaheim Convention Center. I mean, that's a pretty legendary one if you end up over there. No, I mean, I think Overwatch is interesting. I really want to see what's going to happen with the New York team because it's like there hasn't been an esports team in New York for a while or an esports presence in New York, and it's the largest market in the U.S., if not the world. And it's just, the fact that there's so little news about it right now, it's a little, I have a little anxiety about that.
Yeah, I mean, I agree, but I think with you can kind of see the steps. You see New York companies like Madison Square Garden and the baseball owner. I'm blanking on his name.
AEG maybe?
No, AEG's in LA. The owner of the Mets, right?
Sterling Capital.
Yeah, Sterling Capital. Yeah, all making strategic investments, whether it's buying a team or through some other investments. Getting into esports. I mean, it's just setting up the signs. And Overwatch has clearly, and Blizzard has clearly, like you mentioned before, say that they you see to the panel, they prefer traditional ownership, people with deep pockets who are able to bring in, obviously, like put in more money.
Who have the pipelines to execute their
exactly,
product.
and also have the physical locations at the same time. I mean, eventually the Overwatch League, the plan is for it to come to stadiums. So whether that is a newly built stadium specifically for Overwatch with probably smaller seating, or whether it is using the practice ground of your NFL team or your MLB team, or even using the main stadium or some kind of room in the stadium for this, obviously has a huge benefit from a facilities perspective. And I think it's just a matter of time till New York gets some really, really good esports players.
Here's my question for you.
Yeah.
All these owners, like once they're getting their infusion of capital from Madison Square Garden, AEG, or whoever, they're going out there and they're like, we're going to be supported by teams who know how to run local events. I think it's worked with traditional sports, but what worked yesterday doesn't necessarily mean it'll work today. And there's a lot of people on the fence, on both sides of that fence. Do you anticipate any difficulties or friction with traditional owners pushing esports owners in a direction that's, maybe in conflict with how things are done in esports?
Absolutely. I think there are two new things that are part of the Overwatch League. One is regionality, so having cities, which is normal in traditional sports. It's what drives traffic. And the second is franchising, right? And I think what you're saying, I'm positive about franchising. I think that's very much the way, especially for our endemic teams. This is the way you create capital and create value.
I mean, the thing that killed me before franchising was that you'd have these teams that would enter the LCS. They would buy a team house. They would buy all these, facilities. They would, put up the startup capital, and then 6 months later, once they were relegated, all of that was wiped away. So the next person had to build it up from scratch. That is so much waste.
Yeah, and it has to do with creating long-term sponsorships. If you're a PSG, and we all know the failure that they had in league, but they invested a lot of money.
PSG, I'm sorry, which team was that?
Paris Saint-Germain.
Oh my God, yeah.
So they invest a lot of money in this league, and they drive sponsorship. Obviously, the sponsorship deals that PSG makes aren't 1-year sponsorship deals; they're long-term sponsorship deals. And here, they cannot go to their investors and say like, "Hey, Coca-Cola invests X amount of money over the next 5 years," if they can make sure that they can stay in the league for that long.
Yeah.
So I'm very, very happy that we're getting franchising, whether it's Overwatch, whether it's League, whether it's the LCS. I'm a little less excited about regionality, not because of having a place for people to come, and I think it's good to have these teams play against each other. But it's not. I believe it's not what it makes it up. What it says it's going to be. Their ideas are, we're going to fill up stadiums with Overwatch players.
Yeah.
LCS maybe a smaller venue week after week.
Yeah, I mean it's like that LCS venue. It's like what 200, 300 seats maybe. Yeah. And that's something that's huge, been around forever, and. I mean, yeah. I guess if you think about it, it's like there's something called like region exhaustion. So it's like if you're in LA, it's like you're not going to go to the LCS studio every weekend. But if it's more of a traveling tour, and they come to New York, I think that a bunch of people will be excited to go. I don't know if they're going to be excited to go 10 times a year, 15 times a year, whatever it is.
I mean, it's the UFC model, right?
Yeah.
So you never go to a city, with the exceptions of New York and LA, or Vegas,
yeah.
more than once every year.
Yeah.
You have these big events. It can be a traveling league. That's a possibility. But primarily, I think when you're looking at Madison Square Garden, mm-hmm. No, you're not going to fill up Madison Square Garden every week. Or every 2 weeks, or however periodically you have these games. But one of the things why I'm so interested in the fact that CLG is being bought out and hopefully for investment in LCS is that MSG actually has a theater, right?
Yeah.
And here you have, I think, 1,000-seater, which you don't need to fill up the whole 1,000.
ESL ran an event there a couple times, right?
Yeah. So here you have an event here you have a space that is much more realistic.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of the way to go. You build it up slowly if you want to have regionality. But it takes away one really big part of esports, is the fact that there is no regionality.
Yeah.
And that you can be a kid from Singapore.
I mean, to your point, I think one of the things that teams are struggling with is fans get attached to players, right? And then they don't really stick around for the team. So as players move around, the team is kind of, at the mercy of the players. And if the team for some reason now can offer an attachment that's, some players and some regionality, I think it's a huge win for them. Also, to your earlier point about like the whole UFC model, I mean, that was the MLG model for, 10 years or so. Yes. And if they're going to be the operators for the Overwatch League, I mean, they knocked it out of the park last weekend with the Call of Duty event.
Incredible.
It'd be great to maybe see that for the next year or so.
I mean, I think, and kudos to MLG, and obviously, just for the record, Anton, you're an MLG alum.
Yes.
So obviously a little biased, but I'm not an MLG alum, so I'm not as biased. But I have to say that watching the champs, it was tremendous, and especially knowing that the staff that MLG works with, the numbers and the budget that they work with, is a lot leaner than some of your other favorite leagues, and as far as I know.
So to be fair, and I'm biased, the publisher-owned leagues have much larger budgets than the independent leagues. So just when you're comparing, that MLG event, bear that in mind. I don't think that they spend, Riot spends $20 million on their mid-season invitation. I don't think MLG was spending $20 million on that event.
I wasn't comparing it to like your local league or maybe even ESL.
Yeah.
I was comparing it to a Riot or to possibly even the things that Blizzard is doing with the Overwatch League. Yeah. So clearly tremendous job done, and it's really. I sent it to some of my friends that are in sports business, and that have nothing to do with esports. And I showed them, I'm like, just look at this. Like, this is a masterclass of how a lean team can build a great production. And yeah, I'm very, very excited to see what they will do with Overwatch, and especially the league. And that's why it's going to be interesting, because all of a sudden you have a team that is very small, right? That now all of a sudden, do they need to do all the productions in every city? Like, do they need to have a presence in Austin and in LA and in New York?
So I feel like if they do the UFC model for the first year, it does help to have the same guys doing it over and over again. Just because as you're traveling around, it's you get your rhythms and whatnot, and it's throwing new faces in every single time. Even for the little stuff, it's going to make it much harder. So if based on my experience, I would say that yes, it is the most efficient way to deliver the best product is to have the same 20 to 50 guys on the road for all those events. That's what they did for the last year, and it was great.
No, but so. I agree with you. My mind was just going a little further and looking at the year or two after.
I think a year or two after, it's going to have to be all these arena operators like MSG or AEG that are buying into the league. MSG didn't actually buy into the league, but Sterling, they have their own Met Stadium. I mean, their goal is to sell tickets, and I think that they are going to want to run their own productions. I think that MLG will act like maybe as a consultant or something and tell them how to set it up. But ultimately, those guys want to control that revenue stream, and I think that a potential Overwatch League will be stronger for it.
I think so too, but at the same time, that can bring a whole lot of difficulties with them.
Oh yeah, totally.
Seeing, just
somebody's going to hire the NASL sound guy.
That's one thing. I think they're going to hire like MLB executives. For let's say the Mets, they're going to use their own production people most likely.
Yeah.
So here, it's going to be hilarious. Someone who is used to making a telecast, as they call it, for like an average age of 50 years old, all of a sudden needs to do an Overwatch League.
Yeah.
Might have some cringy moments. I hope MLG has some serious hands in this.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think that the handoff should be slow. All right, so moving on from Overwatch, the one name that I've seen pop up over and over and over again is Tencent. And I think that they've made a couple of interesting moves. So the most recent piece of news that came out was that Tencent supposedly, quotation marks, air quotes, invested in Bluehole, the maker of Pub Battlegrounds. Pub Battlegrounds came out today and they said, no, Tencent is not an investor. When I dug into it on social media, one of the interesting theories that I saw, and this is not confirmed, but it would make some sense, was that Tencent bought out some of the early investors in Bluehole. And I think the share price that was mentioned, or the share amount, was 15%. So I think that it's great for the early investors that Tencent allowed them to grow their money. I think it's scary for Bluehole if they don't want to be part of Tencent, that Tencent, there's a giant behemoth, now has their claws in your company. I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
I've been a Tencent admirer for like years, and it's just Tencent and Amazon, I think, are the two most interesting companies in the field in esports. I've just seen Tencent swallowing game publisher, specifically esports publisher, after each other. And I think, the one thing that a lot of people forget is that if you want to have Chinese distribution, it is very difficult to do that without having some involvement with Tencent.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think that Bluehole Studios, if they don't want this, obviously it isn't good, but it's kind of making a pact with the devil, where you have to let Tencent in order to get into the Chinese market, which is such a huge market. What do you think, Anton?
I think that Tencent is obviously very good at what they do. I think that if China is a massive market, so I think that's good. I think that the only situation where this is bad is if Bluehole, if it wasn't in Bluehole's plan, and at that point it's like you grow this baby, and then this baby all of a sudden has a foster parent that you didn't really want.
Well, I think just for our listeners who might not fully understand the humongous reach of Tencent. Here's just a handful of companies that like Tencent either fully owns or has investments in.
Yeah.
So they own all of Riot Games.
They own all of Riot Games. That last 7%, by the way, that they bought out, I heard went for a massive amount of money. There was a blog actually recently of was it Dustin Beck's house that he bought in LA, and it's like, oh, that's the Tencent money.
They also own about 25% of Activision Blizzard.
I heard it was less than that.
Yeah, a little less than 25.
Okay,
Right?
I heard 5, but I'm not 100%.
Really?
I don't think it's 25. 25 feels way too large.
It could have been 5.
But they own part of Activision Blizzard. Yeah.
They own, and this is, I don't know how correct this is now that you've said this, but they own a majority stake of Supercell.
Yes.
So here you have 2, 3, and there are a lot more. Like Epic Games, Glue Mobile.
All of Smite. What is it, Smite? Is that Epic or is that somebody else?
I think it's Epic. I'm not.
No, Hi-Rez. They own all of Hi-Rez, which is like 3 games.
They own Twitch's competitor, Dojo TV.
Okay, 2 different demos, but okay, I'll give it to you.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, like, here's how far their reach goes in esports and gaming in general.
Yeah.
Like, if there's a company that's making moves, most likely Tencent has their hands in them.
Yeah.
And this is really unique in the industry, and what's really, really interesting is that when you're talking to a casual esports fan and you mentioned the name Tencent, they have no idea who this is, but here's a company that probably owns, partially or either fully owns, in case of Riot, the publisher of your favorite esports title.
Yeah.
So, truly fascinating.
So, a little side note, but this was like an interesting number. I was talking to my friends over at Gamo Loco, and they were reviewing viewed hours for Overwatch versus Paladins. So, Paladins is a game that's developed by Hi-Rez. Hi-Rez is owned by Tencent. Paladins is largely viewed as, kind of like a knockoff of Overwatch. The games are very, very similar. What blew me away was that the Shanghai Overwatch Invitational was the same weekend as DreamHack Valencia's Paladins Finals. Viewed hours total for those. So Overwatch, I think, was at around 750,000 viewed hours on Twitch. And Paladins was almost at 500,000 viewed hours on Twitch. And for a game that you barely hear anything about, to basically be on par with Overwatch, or at half, that's insane. That's like one of those wins that's creeping on the border.
But what's really interesting with Tencent is the moment they buy into a game or they distribute a game, they actually a lot of times change the game and make it free to play.
Yeah.
So one of the things is I think they own they do distribution for Rocket League in China.
Yeah.
So actually one of the big changes that Rocket League had to do, it isn't a free to play game in the US. You buy your $15 to buy Rocket League. Now you have almost everything, maybe some skins you need to buy, but that's about it. Here, when for Tencent, it needs to be a free-to-play because that way it lowers the barrier completely for the Chinese market.
Yeah.
And they know their market through and through, and they know that if they can just get as much users as possible, they can get an audience, and
they're trying to get complementary products onto their platform, right? 100%. So the other that's the most recent Tencent headline, but for the past month, there's been a lot of interesting murmurings. One of them was that Tencent revealed a 5-year plan to create a $14.6 billion esports market in China. So, $15 billion, that's probably the largest number I've heard of thrown around in esports, Newzoo or otherwise.
Well, that's about 14 times the esports market right now, I think, maybe even more. So,
and that was good. And then the other one that I saw that was interesting was that Tencent just hired Droga 5, which is a huge advertising company in New York. They're famous for their experiences to do their US creative. So I'm trying to think of what Droga 5's past clients were, but the fact that Tencent actually hired a US agency to focus on US marketing, I think that we're going to see some massive moves in the coming months.
Well, I think there are two points where Tencent had huge growth for the US market. Number one is pretty logical, but they have certain games that they make themselves. One of them being Honor of Kings. Sometimes it's called Something Else Kings, but I think Honor of Kings is the best translation. Yeah. And this is basically their take on making a mobile League of Legends. That's basically what it is.
Yeah.
And this game is so popular in China that actually they had to restrict the number of hours that minors can play to about an hour if you're under 12, and between 2 hours if you're 12 to 16. And this game is so incredibly popular, and it just launched, or it's about to launch in the US. So this is incredible, because here you have something that is so incredibly popular coming into the US, but they need marketing for this. And I think that's one of the reasons why they're looking for actually US agencies. And one of the things that they've done that is really interesting is they actually bought the rights to or licensed Batman as being one of the playable skins in the game.
That, yeah.
So
Infinite Crisis comes back.
Yeah. So here's clearly here's a they have the budget clearly to do these type of things, and they're extremely interested in penetrating the U.S. market, not through just acquiring companies, but with their own IP.
Yep.
The second thing is that, and I don't think that is I think that is a long-term play, but they basically own Steam's competitor in China.
Yeah.
They have their own, it's Wii Game or something like that it's called, and it's their own kind of online platform to buy games, and it's really, really popular in China. And Steam hasn't really been challenged everywhere else. I mean, China, they're having difficulties, but anywhere else they're king. So it's only a matter of time to see if Tencent can try to break that.
Yeah, I mean, speaking of Steam and showing like a lot of their cracks, some of the U.S. numbers for Dota 2's international, they looked a little low. I mean, do you have any thoughts on those?
I don't know. I haven't really seen those numbers. I actually saw some positive numbers, I think, overall, but the U.S. numbers could be low. To be honest, I'm not too big of a Dota 2 follower to tell you about that.
I'm actually trying to pull them up right now, but what I did see was that they were just a little bit higher than what they were last year. I'm trying to pull it up right now. But yeah, no, I mean, Dota 2's international was pretty cool. I mean, it's, you know, they obviously figured out a great model for it. What is it? They put 24 million to prizing, probably maybe 20 million on production, and then 50% of that goes to them. That's basically like, you know, it's a pretty healthy blockbuster cinema movie. And so, I mean, props to them, keeping it going. I think it's going to be scary for the community the moment that an international raises less money than it did before.
Yeah.
What do you think the implications of that are going to be?
Well, I think this goes all to the whole like open versus closed system. Like, you know, like Valve with Dota has really have one system where they let the fans fund a lot of it. And, you know, I don't think Dota has risen in popularity. I think it's staggering. So I think it's only a matter of time until an international does not get as high, maybe next year or the year after, because this year they got, you know, 23 million or something as their prize pool, which was ridiculous. And I don't think 2-3 years from now they'll be able to reach those numbers.
Yeah.
And I think it's going to be a wake up call for the community. I mean, Dota. The problem with Dota in comparison to an Overwatch or any other of the newer esports titles is that the barrier to entry is so incredibly high for a casual fan. In order to watch Dota, I watched some of the international, and it was really difficult for me. And I have a friend who plays Dota very, very actively, and he said it cost him like 200-300 hours of playtime before he actually understood what was going on and during the international, actually fully understood the little nuances. I'll compare that to Overwatch, which, you know, I think Dota still is miles ahead of Overwatch, but just saying as far as future potential.
I mean, that's a problem that Overwatch is going to have. That game, it's you know, at least with Dota, you have that, you know, God view where you can kind of see the action that's going on, and it's like you can tell, like, oh, they're running to the other side of the map. Yeah. They're trying to knock down their castle. Whereas, like, with Overwatch, it's like they're pushing the car, but this guy's just, I mean, I guess it's, like, similar, but, I mean, I feel that Overwatch productions do need to improve in terms of, you know, the barrier of entry. Like, it's hard to follow the action. Sorry, so just to backtrack a little bit, I did pull up the numbers if you want to glance at it. So English peak was 514,000 viewers, and the overall peak was 11 million viewers. So basically, something like 90% of the active audience was watching in China. I think the overall peak I think did occur during the finals. Twitch peak was 815,000. Dota also broadcasts in game, which I think is something that a lot of people. I think it's a good move on Steam's part. I think that a lot of people are starting to get a little leery of Amazon owning Twitch and then potentially having Twitch become another Steam, where you're paying 25% of your margins to Amazon to distribute your game.
I mean, yeah. What are your thoughts on that?
I think that it's a very logical move. I think that it's definitely on Amazon's radar. They integrated They integrated the sale of games into Twitch, and I think, don't quote me on this, but it was something like exactly 18 months, or right about 18 months after the acquisition. So I think a lot of the guys that were on the Twitch side that sold the company had performance clauses, and putting that feature in was probably one of the clauses that allowed them to get some more of that Amazon money, because it's like you're avoiding clawbacks. I thought the timing was super interesting. I heard that going around. So no, I think Amazon's going to use Twitch to sell games. I think Amazon's trying to get a couple tentpole titles of their own. What's their the one in SoCal right now that your friend's at?
They have like Amazon Game Studios.
Right, but what's their big title? The one that they were on a Battleship most recently. It's but yeah. So Amazon Studios, they bought a couple studios. They're building some things. Their head of esports is a guy who was at both Riot and Blizzard, Ilya. So he obviously knows what he's doing. He was also at Magic the Gathering with Wizards of the Coast. I've seen a couple different titles come through that pipeline. It remained like they need a hit. I don't think that they've been able to get a hit yet, but it's Amazon. They're a company that'll keep throwing money at the wall until it sticks. Oh man, what is that game? Are you
Breakaway?
Breakaway. There we go. But yeah, I mean, did you see that broadcast where they were on the Battleship?
It had something to do. I watched it for a little bit. It was actually on a Dutch. It was on a Dutch battleship. Yeah. So that really piqued my interest. Like here, they can basically create successful titles by themselves. Like if they really want to push it, they can put Breakaway on the front page of Twitch for a couple weeks, and you'll get people, and especially if it's free to play, you'll get people to come in and just download it. They can pay some of the top streamers to just play the game, and they'll put it up front so it doesn't even look too awkward if like a very famous streamer is streaming it. And with a one-click download button, because you already have Twitch Prime, and you're getting special loot boxes if you download the game now. It's going to be very, very difficult for a 16-year-old to say no to that. But it's going to be difficult for us as well.
I already have my mom's credit card now. Speaking of streaming, another big one this week was the ML BAM Tech deal.
Yes.
Okay, so Disney acquired 75% share of ML BAM.
BAM Tech.
BAM Tech was initially a project built by the MLB to deliver baseball games via digital online streaming. They were some of the first people into the space back in 2002, and they built this amazing infrastructure to deliver all the streams. Game of Thrones, HBO, they used BAM Tech's infrastructure to deliver all their content. A couple of months ago, it came out that Riot sold their LCS rights to BAM Tech for $350 million. Then earlier this week, after that Disney announcement, there were some rumors that BAM Tech was kind of a little bit behind on their deliverables for LCS.
Couple months.
What are your thoughts?
Well, first it talks about Disney buying it. I think it's a brilliant move. Just a little bit of like sports business information, like traditional sports business. You might think that the MLB and like the NBA and the NFL and like all these leagues, you might think that they're in competition with each other, and that is true. But some of your favorite leagues might use BAM Tech, like technology. So this is a company that's trailblazing, and it's really the only reason why while Major League Baseball is still relevant. It's interesting because at the same time, Disney also announced that they're going to have 2 OTT platforms So one is they're planning on having something which is like Netflix, where they're going to have their competitors, and you're no longer going to be able to have Disney properties on Netflix anymore.
Yeah.
And then secondly, they announced an ESPN-like OTT platform.
Okay.
So this is really interesting, knowing the fact that you have a Riot deal. So Riot has said multiple times before, and I hold to their word, although I'm not 100% sure, that it's not going to be behind a paywall. So whether or not the LCS is going to be on the ESPN platform is yet to be seen. It's a great way to monetize. But they have said before that some of the other content, maybe like additive content, like shoulder content, that might be interesting for a little bit more of a hardcore fan, will probably going to be behind a paywall. Well, all of a sudden you have two really, really good distribution platforms for this, and you have the most influential company in entertainment supporting you.
So I think that there's a couple things that are interesting. From my experience in, working with the Zubu and other streaming platforms, the amount of money that BAMTech paid for the rights to this content is insane. It's something close to like a factor of 10 of previous deals. And, if they're hoping to make that money back on in-stream advertising, good luck. I think that it's going to be an uphill climb. I don't think that, CPMs are high enough to support that. I think that subscription packages might be interesting, but these kids are already subscribed on Twitch. What value add is BAMTech going to give? Number two is, or number three or whatever number I'm on is there. It has to be. The money's going to come from microtransactions. So it's something similar to what Dota 2 has, where it's like if you watch and you have item drops during the game. I think that would be awesome. What I'm interested to see though is whether or not Tencent, who owns all of Riot Games, really wants to have Disney be their partner in the Western world. I mean, these two companies are headed for a collision course. I'm trying to think of the last time the two behemoths of that size had that happen.
Well, the funny thing is they even both own theme parks now.
Yeah,
so,
it's so. What is it like? Were we looking at the first international merger or something? That would be interesting.
Well, if you're looking at if you're looking at articles in Bloomberg or Forbes, they always name Tencent as here's the next Disney, or Tencent wants to be the Disney of the 21st century, these type of quotes.
Activision Blizzard was listed last week on Bloomberg as the next Disney.
Okay. Well, 5% to 25% of that is Tencent. So, well, Activision Blizzard, according to a Forbes article 2 days ago, apparently created esports. Yeah. So we'll see.
Yeah.
But yeah, that is. I didn't even think of that, and that's a great point, because Tencent is the Lyft or the Uber, and Disney is the old taxi company.
Yeah.
And but this is the good thing is that Bob Iger and Disney's I think that they have realized this early enough, so they're kind of pivoting themselves and kind of disrupting themselves with what they're doing with this OTT platform. But at the same time, I cannot imagine Tencent, who owns the game of League of Legends. It's like owning the rights to the game of football. I don't know if let's say ESPN owned the rights to the game of football and NBC all of a sudden wants to bid on the NFL. I don't know how far they would let that go. So that's really interesting. And it's especially interesting to see if Tencent is willing to kind of cannibalize their own business, is to not let that go to Disney.
To peek under the hood at Disney, maybe.
Yeah.
No, I think that it's two large companies that are playing in the same space, and it's the deal itself felt weird to me just by the sheer size of what the LCS rights went for. So I'm curious. I don't know. That was another 10-cent thing. So let's. Before we wrap up, I guess let's do one or two more stories. What are you thinking?
Perfect. So one of the things that is really interesting for me, which some of the esports heads will sigh when I say this, but NBA 2K. So there's a lot of info released, and just a little side note, so that I have to say that I was involved with NBA 2K in the beginning. So I helped a little bit with their strategic planning long before the announcements and all these type of things. But there's some really interesting information that I didn't know about until a couple of weeks ago. Things like games will be held from a central studio the first season.
Makes sense.
That makes a lot of sense. So I think that was kind of an obvious kind of thing, specifically because similar to Overwatch, they're doing the same thing their first season at least. So I think that's a really good thing. But then there were two kind of underwhelmed stories that were kind of under the radar that are really fascinating to me. So number one is that signage and sponsorship can be sold virtually. So you can sell. So 2K will work with NBA 2K League, and let's say you're the New York Knicks. You can sell, the fake Madison Square Garden to and it can be like the Coca-Cola Garden.
I mean, yeah, you had that happen though a couple of times before with like Dota 2 had when tournaments were run for Dota 2, you'd see associated brands in game.
Yeah, but this is. Did you have the fact that they sold the naming rights to the stadiums?
I don't know if it was the naming rights to the stadium, but I remember just seeing Monster banners all over.
Yeah, so that's. I mean, like I said, it's.
And doesn't FIFA do the same thing where they where if you play the game, like the side placards they switch like.
They do. FIFA does that in their game.
Yeah.
But it's interesting because they're giving the rights of this to the individual teams. So the teams are allowed to sell signage in their stadiums.
So it's like if you, let's say I own the T-Mobile Arena, I get a value add by being not only do I own the T-Mobile Arena in real life, I also own it digitally.
No, they can sell it individually.
So I can have a T-Mobile Arena in real life and a Sprint Arena in digitally.
Yeah. So or they're going to be deals. There could probably future naming rights deals where we both at the same time.
Yeah.
But there are some categories to which the NBA and the 2K have given the rights to the individual teams to sell. So let's say you're Corsair, right, and you want to work with the NBA, you can have a banner in the NBA 2K League in let's say the Utah Jazz's stadium, during their games. So I think that's pretty innovative. And it's pretty interesting, and it's a good way for teams to get some revenue. But then, the question is, the big question is how successful is this league going to be, and whatever. And I think the second interesting news that was under the radar can kind of help and kind of up in my spirits for NBA 2K, is that they'll actually have a combine mode in the game. So starting in a couple months, 1 or 2 months before the draft, they'll have actually an in-game mode where you as a player, you log in with your stats, and there are specific drills you can run, specific NBA 2K drills, and you'll get a profile, and you'll get stats, and you can use those stats then to be available for scouting. So I think that is a very interesting way to kind of bring in a more casual NBA 2K fan of saying hey, this league is really something I can do myself. This is the regular man's league. Whether or not it's successful is yet to be seen, but it's a pretty interesting idea, and makes it a lot easier for all these NBA 2K managers to kind of find their players. What do you think?
I think one of the interesting pieces of information that I saw was when they had a broadcast on, maybe it was 6 months ago, I was still in LA, they put it on Twitter, and their viewership was surprisingly high.
Yes.
I think I saw it go up to about 15,000 CCUs, which, for a game that most esports fans don't really talk about, that's a legitimate audience. It's it wasn't an event that was super promoted or whatnot. So I was kind of impressed with that. So I think for fun, let's look back and do little time flashback to 2016 and read some headlines from a year ago and see if any of them made any traction. So let's do a All right, back in time. So things that we were talking about in esports a year ago. Sliver TV is a VR Twitch for your favorite esports titles.
No, I remember. I think about a year ago during ESL 1 New York City, I tried out Sliver for the first time.
Yeah.
Have you heard anything from them since, besides just the occasional...
No.
But that's because a year ago we all thought that VR was going to be the next big thing, and look where it is
there, yeah. All right. WISA announces former HBO president Kent Hirschman as its new commissioner and executive team.
well, Wiese has actually done some good things the past month.
So they picked up who? They got FaZe, Splice. Is that guy still with them though, or was that one of the controversial characters?
I don't know. I don't want to make a statement on that.
All right, I don't remember either. Let's see. Stray Freeze 1.5 million.
Okay.
Are they still around?
Probably not. They're not making headlines at least.
Yeah, I remember that they sponsored a bunch of ESL things, and I haven't seen since then. Twitch swallowed up the Curse brand. What do you think about that? I think that's a big one.
That's big, yeah. I mean, clearly it's a good move. What you're seeing, what they're doing now with their desktop app, and they're. I mean, the past couple months they've integrated a lot of Curse stuff into their native brands and native apps. So I think that was a really good move, and it's very logical to kind of Amazon's idea where they want to get as much community surrounding their platforms, and they want to get as much of your time as possible as well. So they don't want you to go on Discord and do something while you can do it while you're watching Twitch anyways. So I think that was a really good move. How about you?
Absolutely. I think Discord was eating into a lot of their market share in a lot of the places they wanted to be. I think Curse is kind of helping them. I think Discord is still better at what it's doing. Mm-hmm. And I think with their screen sharing idea, I think it would be interesting if the one thing that I've always wanted since my Halo days was an instantaneous screen share. And I think I've blogged about this before, but if you look at Twitch, the value proposition there is if I watch, I'm trying to think, Lyric, I'm watching Lyric because Lyric will entertain me, right? So Lyric gets 75,000 viewers or whatever, and it's great for Lyric. Then I go on and I stream, and I'm probably a terrible streamer, and nobody watches me, and then I feel bad because it's like, I'm not providing value, and it's like, I'm not getting that reinforcement of seeing a massive amount of CCUs. And I think what Discord's value add is going to be is something like streamers will not entertain you, streamers will make you play better. So the idea is it's like if you and I are playing games side by side, and or if you and I are playing a game, you're at home, I'm at home, I can watch what's going on your screen while I'm playing my game and get additional information. I'm almost like stream sniping my own teammates. And so that's something that we saw a lot of in Halo 1, which is one of the games that I picked up on. And if you looked at the top players, they wouldn't even talk to each other. All they did was just watch their screens and act upon it, the Ogre Twins. So I think if you incorporate some element of screen watching your teammates, and the incentive to stream is I will provide more information to my teammates so we are more likely to win. I mean, that's a huge vertical for Discord. You're essentially making players become better gamers.
How do you think, the big question with Discord is, which is with many startups, but specifically Discord as they're growing so much, is you have this community now, but their biggest issue is monetization. There's little to no happening.
I'm not worried about it. I'm more excited to see growth. I think that you have to, if you don't have the growth, it doesn't matter if you monetize or not, right? So they've reached kind of that level of growth. I think that Twitch was able to monetize, or eventually figure out a way to monetize. I mean, I think they still lose money though, to be honest. But with the features that Twitch is rolling out, selling games or subscriptions or advertisement or their own internal sales efforts, I think Discord will be able to get there. I think that there's a lot more. There's definitely a lot of opportunity for them. I'm not worried about it right now.
Yeah, fair enough. Any other stories?
And let's see. From a year ago, Twitter streamed its first esports competition. That was at the end of July. What do you think about Twitter? Just hired their new head of gaming,
a former
Rishi.
MLG alum.
Yeah,
right?
I love Rishi. Yeah,
I like the fact that there are various distribution options for esports. And Twitch is an amazing platform, and I love Twitch. But having Twitch as like the end all be all for watching esports, especially the bigger tournaments, it is not good for the industry, especially as exclusivity becomes a big part of esports. You want to be able to not only go to Twitch, but go to, let's say, Twitter and say, hey, you have this platform, we have this, or YouTube gaming, and we want to sell this to you. So I think it's great. From what I've known, and this is just from numbers from Twitter themselves, I remember I was at #sports in Midtown, which was like a conference, and the head of sports for esports, head of sports for Twitter spoke, and she was saying how the Halo tournaments which according to their numbers, and I don't really believe it, but let's just keep our face value.
I've seen those numbers, and I've worked on a Halo tournament last month. There's a stupid amount of viewership that comes from Twitter.
Okay, so they said millions of viewers and they said it blew some of their traditional sports out of the way with like bigger names, and so great, that's amazing. I think it's especially interesting for, let's say, an NBA 2K or FIFA or Call of Duty, like titles that the average Joe has played before and might be interested in just watching.
It's a titles where the audience lives in different places than Twitch.
Exactly.
No, I think that's great. I think the other one that's kind of tangent to the story is, I think Facebook has been making a bigger push into esports. They hired Snoop, I think it was about a year ago, but they did roll out like some kind of their Facebook Watch program.
So Facebook Watch basically is Facebook's getting into content. And they're doing some really interesting things with live content, and they actually have a joint venture with Rick Fox and his production company, and that's really interesting. I've seen some of their live shows in the morning, which is basically like a weekly game show in the morning. They're going to do some more exclusive content, some more behind the scenes content, and that's really interesting. And as I overheard someone I really, really trust in OTT network say, is that content is the Trojan horse. And I would like to add a little bit to it. The Trojan horse for content is sports and esports.
Yeah.
Because, getting a good show is interesting, but, you can watch it later, you'll watch it, different times. But if you can only go on Facebook to watch the LCS, I'm using that as an example, or the NFL, you'll make that Facebook account and you're like, screw it, I'll get back to Facebook, or I'll go to Twitter. And once you're on there, they can get you in with the rest of the content.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Mo, I think this was a pretty good initial episode.
I think so too.
Yeah. And guys, Mo, where can people find you?
Well, you can find me on, it's a really, really awkward username because it's a mixture of my gamer tag and my last name. You can find me at Moishe Eisenman, which is MOISHIEISENMANN. How about you, Anton?
And you guys can find me on Twitter at Joker Can't Spell, JOKR Can't Spell. There's no E in there, so if you understand the joke, more power to you. And thank you guys for tuning in.